Today, I want to talk about Israel. And the reason why is because this last week, they did a strike on a hospital in Gaza. And this is nothing new. However, they did something that was a little bit different that I think needs to have the light shined on it to show us just who we're supporting. So, at the very base level, what happened is that they struck a hospital in Gaza. And what will typically happen is aid workers, think like doctors, as well as journalists to cover, oh, hey, this is what happened, here's the damage, that kind of stuff. These two groups will often come in to cover or provide support or whatever is needing to be done. And then what happened is a short time later, intentionally waiting for these people to come in, Israel struck this area again, the same hospital. Quite frankly, very disgusting. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at breaking points and get their coverage on it and then provide my opinions on it as well. So without further ado, we'll get to the breaking points coverage.
So we covered this horrible story yesterday, and I am going to play the video again just as a reminder and, warning before I play it that it is deeply disturbing. The IDF struck Nasser Hospital, which is the most significant hospital in the Gaza Strip at this point. And
just as a quick insertion there, if you don't know who the IDF is, essentially that is the military organization of Israel.
They waited 15 minutes for journalists to arrive to document the damage, for ambulance crews, civil defense personnel to come in to rescue those who had been impacted. They waited 15 minutes. And then they struck again. They murdered, I believe it was 20 people, 5 of them journalists, by the way, and also, again, a number of civil defense workers.
And just my commentary on that specific, like that time period, right, where it's 15 minutes, is that's just enough for these people to come flooding in to try and help. Because you would assume if they were just continually shelling it, it would be within like 5 minutes maybe, right? All of the strikes would happen usually simultaneously or very close in proximity, not 15 minutes after. And so by doing that, it's just proving that it was very intentional, that that's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to draw people in who are trying to help and then strike it again. And the other thing to point out about it is this specific hospital that they struck was the one that there's a guy that's been going around in the news recently that he was over there and he came back and he was commenting, and he's been on a few different podcasts and news shows recently talking about his experience there and how awful it was. I think he got a lot of traction on Theo Vaughn's podcast. I think that was the one that got the most traction. But the thing is about it is this is, I guess I'll say, a hospital that has been in the news recently or has been called out. And it could just be coincidence that, hey, it's the largest remaining hospital in Gaza, or it could be intentionally targeted because someone who was serving there as a volunteer from the U.S. went over there, was serving, helping people, trying to provide aid to people who were injured, right? Because it's a doctor working in a hospital, and then comes back here, and then it could be intentionally targeted, it could not be, who knows. But to me, when I see that, I go, that's kind of, I scratch my head and I go, that's kind of interesting that this one hospital is the one that was targeted and then essentially was double tapped, in that it was attacked and then 15 minutes later was attacked again. So just wanted to point that out as well, because I thought that was a very interesting coincidence. And it truly could be, I will say it could truly be a coincidence, just because it is the largest operating hospital in Gaza still, because all the rest of them have been bombed, but just something that is interesting to keep in mind.
That bombing, that strike, was caught on camera. Again, warning, this is disturbing. Let's take a look.
لا حصل الآن خليك يا الله راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس.
So you can see them just blown apart, and the damage was utterly catastrophic. So because you had 5 journalists killed, number of whom actually work for Western outlets, there was a significant outcry. When this happens to Palestinians who aren't attacked.
As there 100% should be. I mean, there should be outcry just across the board. But yeah, there should be a huge amount of backlash against this. And I think it 100% was to send a message to any of these, Western countries that, hey, don't be reporting. Because, I mean, Bibi has admitted it himself, where he basically says we have a PR issue. Well, this is not helping that, but certainly it could be a chess move if you're thinking about it in that manner. And it's disgusting to say, but if you do something like this, then that chills other outlets or other reporters that, hey, we shouldn't even go near when these things happen to try and report on them bombing a hospital or whatever they're doing, because you could end up meeting the same fate, if you will. And it's absolutely disgusting and needs to be called out. And again, that's why I want to copy it, is because I already think that what's going on in Gaza in general is awful, but also to point this out when something even more crazy takes place and more genocidal, and it's just not good. Why are we supporting them? Why are they our greatest ally?
Attached to any sort of Western organization. This just happens and no one says a goddamn thing. But because these journalists, courageous journalists, were working for Western outlets, there was a bit of an outcry, including some comments from President Trump that we'll play you in a moment. So in response, the Israelis did what they have done occasionally when they felt this sort of international pressure. They've claimed this was a mishap. Oh, we're so sorry. We're going to launch a full investigation to find out what went wrong, as if this isn't part and parcel standard issue Israeli government IDF policy. Here is a spokesperson for the IDF issuing a statement in English, by the way, expressing how they're going to look into this and how they're going to launch an investigation.
This is the thing, is when they address something in English, they're literally just putting it out for the United States and other Western allies, if you will. There's no, like, this is not an internal thing that they're concerned about. This is just putting on a facade and like, oh, we're so sorry. It'll never happen again. We don't know how this happened. That's a disgusting thing, is they do this all the time, and anytime you see anything coming out of them from, in English, it's 100% just show. I mean, because you can find, there are so many examples of when they're talking in Hebrew amongst themselves, they'll say radically different things than what they say when they put something out in English. And it's just provably true. I mean, you can find any translated videos of the things that they have said, and it wildly conflicts with whatever they've said in these videos in English.
We are aware of reports that harm was caused to civilians, including journalists. I would like to be clear from the start. The IDF does not intentionally target civilians. It's begun this war, created impossible fighting conditions.
And just as a point with that, when he says he doesn't intentionally, or they don't intentionally target civilians, just look at the amount of civilians that have died as a result of this war. And not even war. It's you can't even call it a war, because how is it a war against someone who can't fight back? That doesn't make any sense. So as the bombing campaign has gone on, it's tens of thousands of civilians that have died. And it's something like, I think the proportion is somewhere around like 66%. So like 2/3 of the people who have died as a cause of their bombings have been women and children. So it's not even to say, because that's the other thing too, is they will claim that any military-aged man is a combatant of some sort. So who knows how many of those were actually civilians. So the number could be even greater. But I would say any population that you're going in and 2/3 of them that you are killing are women and children, and whatever percent of the military age men are also just civilians and not actually part of Hamas. Well, you're failing. You're not actually, this isn't a serious military action. You're not going in and finding the specific people who are responsible and who are with Hamas. And no, you're blanket bombing everything, and 1/3 of the population is men, and so you're reporting that as Hamas militants, when in actuality you're just bombing indiscriminately, and 1/3 of those targets are men. That's literally what it is.
And is preventing its end by still holding 50 of our hostages. Having said that,
and just to that point really quick, those hostages are probably dead from your indiscriminate bombing. That's the thing, is they can claim forever that, oh no, they still have 50. Well, it's just 50 that haven't been returned yet because they could be dead or starved to death. Like, look at the starvation campaigns that have been going on there, and then them opening fire on the actual aid that comes through. So it's basically a chilling effect on anyone being able to get aid. And if they do, they get mowed down anyway. And what's happening then is that you don't even know if there's 50 people still alive. Like, I would like to see what proof there actually is of even one hostage being left alive. But as long as there's some sort of deniability that, oh, there could be a hostage, in even one hostage in there, well, now it's justifying whatever actions they're taking, and that to me is just completely disgusting. And it's just a ploy to try and provide justification for the actions that they're taking.
Professional military committed to international law, we are obligated to investigate our operations thoroughly.
And they're not being held to international law because the ICJ basically said that what they're doing is a war crime, and that Benjamin Netanyahu has basically, if he goes anywhere else aside from the US and Israel, he would be locked up, he would be arrested. And so, yeah, no, you're not actually complying. Again, this is all BS. He's speaking in English. It's directly to us as a, oh, we're sorry. No, you're not. And you can just, they're not complying by the ICJ rulings. They're just continuing on with the trajectory of indiscriminately bombing all of Gaza.
And professionally. The Chief of the General Staff has instructed that an inquiry be conducted immediately to understand the circumstances of what happened and how it happened, as always.
And I'm curious to see what the results of that will be. I'm sure nothing. At worst, it will be an accident that, oh, some extra missiles just launched, or we were trying to send them off to somewhere else, or whatever. You can't believe anything this guy is saying.
We will present our findings as transparently as possible. We regret any harm to uninvolved individuals and are committed to continue fighting Hamas.
We regret any harm, Sagar. We don't.
And what are going to be the ramifications of that anyway? That's the other thing too. Again, they'll probably never release anything on it. They'll just be, they'll forget about it. It doesn't really matter. Just next news cycle, no one will think anything of it. No one will remember this attack. And that's the thing that's most infuriating, is no one will be held accountable. No, I mean, who's even to be held accountable, right? It's the government's policy to do this. So, yeah, frankly, disgusting.
Intentionally target civilians. Let me just lay out for you guys. This came out recently. Even by the Israeli military's official figures, they say that 83% of the dead are civilians. And we know that is...
Okay, and that's even higher than what I had originally, what I had said. I had said 66%. But again, that was the number that was women and children. So yeah, of the remaining 33%, then a proportion of that's the military age males. But even that, within that, yeah, there's a civilian population, like I was saying, of the males. So 84% is civilian, which is, by all accounts, just awful. Like, completely awful. There's no justification for that. I mean, imagine if you were in school and you had a test and you got, what is that, 16% correct, right? Like, you didn't learn anything. That's literally worse than just guessing at a multiple choice quiz. Literally 16% of the people that you're targeting is who you are actually going after. So yes, again, to call this any sort of success and anything other than a genocide where you're just trying to indiscriminately bomb and take out a population that can't fight back, there's absolutely no justification for this.
It's actually far below what the actual percentage of civilians is, because they count all men, basically, all men over the age of like 15 as being Hamas or some sort of militant. Even by their standards, 83% of those who have been killed were civilians. So at this point, for them to claim that they don't intentionally target civilians and, we regret this mishap, we're going to look into it, we're going to investigate. I don't know who believes this crap at this point.
What was crazy to me was actually the initial response was, let's put E3 please up on the screen, because this is really important. Originally, the Channel 14 in Israel said that this was Hamas's Nasser headquarters and said that they had, quote, identified a surveillance camera used for intelligence gathering, saying it was used by Hamas militants, and then fired the tank shell to, quote, neutralize the threat. The strike was approved and coordinated with senior command. They knew about it before it was being carried out. It was only after it was caught on video, basically on live television, that they came back and they're like, oh, actually, it was a mishap. Like, no. I mean, it is just emblematic of everything.
And that's how you know it's a lie to begin with, is because they came out with a statement that was then proved completely false. And so they just think they can completely get away with it. And are they wrong though? Like, no, not really. So yeah, I mean, we're not holding them to account. No, we continue to send them aid. We continue backing them. We continue. It's just so disgusting. And that's the thing is, they can just lie, bold-faced lie, and there's no ramifications, there's no consequences, there's nothing. They just continue to go on and continue to commit a genocide, and no one in the US in mainstream media wants to talk about it at all. No politician wants to do anything from the norm, and it's just completely disgusting.
On camera with Tony, whenever we interviewed him here, the former Green Beret GHF whistleblower, is shoot first, ask questions later, if at all. And basically, fire at will if you want to. Everything is Hamas. The cameras are Hamas. Any camera there is Hamas.
Right.
The degradation of a hospital or of any civilian infrastructure, reporters, etc., they all deserve to die. Initially, by the way, a lot of the pro-Israel accounts were saying that the journalists and or others, the people who were killed in the strike, were all Hamas. Anyway, so why do we even care? And then the IDF beclowns them because they... And
that's the most insane thing, is because it's literally Western journalists. So how are they part of Hamas? It's completely mind-blowing. It makes no sense whatsoever.
What do they say? They're like, well, actually, it was a mistake. Yeah. After they've spent hours justifying the strike.
Spinning and saying, they're all Hamas. And I want to, we can play a little bit of, let's see, what is this? E5. This is one of the women, one of the journalists who was killed is a woman who's featured in this video that was put out to support Gaza's journalist women. That's her actually right there. Her name is Mariam Abu Daga. Apparently another one of the women who was featured in this video, her husband was killed by the Israelis. And I just want to put a name to these individuals. They're not just statistics in all of this, even though of course there's so many. You could never say all of their names. Hassam al-Masri, who was a Reuters contractor, Mohammed Salama, and worked for Al Jazeera as a cameraman. As I said before, Mariam Abu Daga, she was freelance, worked with AP and others. Incredible photojournalist, by the way. Her work, people have been sharing it. It's just extraordinary. Ahmed Abu Aziz, freelance contributor to Middle East Eye and others, and Moaz Abu Taha, who was freelance and contributed some to Reuters and other outlets. And the way that these outlets, even when their own people were murdered, covered this was also shameful. But that's the reason why the IDF even felt the need to pretend like they cared and like this was a mishap and something that they don't do every single day. We are now at somewhere around 250 journalists who've been killed by the IDF, and it's really,
which is a crazy amount to pretend like they're not being intentionally targeted. Which there have been other stories. I have not covered any of them, but there have been other stories that have been covered where they call out specifically. I mean, 250 is a crazy amount, because what proportion of just think the public in general, in the US, what percentage of people are journalists? It's such a small amount. So yes, they are going to be drawn there because they're trying to cover what's going on there. So there might be a higher proportion. And as I have stated earlier, if it's just indiscriminate bombing, yes, some of them are going to get hit. But it seems to me like that proportion is much higher than it should be. So I feel like there's no way to not envision. It would essentially be impossible to think up some scenario where 250 journalists are essentially being murdered other than they're being targeted. They're not standing underneath bombs to get the scoop. That doesn't make any sense. They have to be, it has to be some sort of chilling effect. And of course they're trying to kill the journalists who are Palestinian. They have no problem with that. No issue. But then other journalists are getting hit as well, which just shows that they are doing double tap strikes where it's, hey, we're trying to bring people in who are trying to help the Palestinians, and then we're bombing them too. And that's exactly what it appears to me is going on.
Clear, they don't want people to be there to document their genocide. That's why they don't allow international journalists from outside to come in. The people we're talking about here are all Palestinians who work freelance for these various news organizations, so that those news organizations have some sort of a window into what is happening inside of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli government doesn't allow journalists in because they don't want their war crimes documented. And then they directly target journalists also like Anas and his whole crew for Al Jazeera because they don't want people to see what they are doing on the ground. The tactic that they use, documented by 972 magazine, of these double tap strikes, this is also standard issue protocol. They will hit something, in this case a hospital, then they will wait 15 minutes for journalists, aid workers, rescue crews, everyone to gather, and then they will strike it again. It is literally a tactic of terrorists.
It is, and the other thing too is that, especially when you're bombing something as high profile as a hospital, this is one of the few remaining ones still standing. And so of course, if you're shelling it and then you're shelling it again 15 minutes later, it 100% is, it's going to get the coverage. It is very high profile because it's one of the last ones remaining. People are going to come in, and then to this point, it's literally a terrorist tactic that they're using. They're literally going in and they're rebombing it, knowing full and well that people are going to flood in to try and help those that are injured, and then also obviously report on a hospital being bombed.
A terrorist tactic. That's what we're talking about here, and they do it all the time. One last note on Nasser Hospital is all the doctors that we've talked to, American doctors, who we've spoken to after they've come back to Gaza to relay their experience there, at least the ones we've talked to recently, they all go to Nasser Hospital. That is the hospital that is closest to these IDF aid distribution sites that end up in aid massacres on according to the doctors, on a daily basis. And Nasser Hospital is the one that receives most of the casualties from those mass casualty incidents. So this is a very important part also of the.
And that's exactly what I was saying is, again, any of the doctors that are coming back, that has been where they're working. And, oh, by the way, most of the people who are injured in the aid attacks, that is the hospital that they are going to. So yeah, who knows if it's to get back at the news that has been coming out of there and the doctors who have been working there, and it's a strike on that. Or again, I'm sure they have their own intel that says, okay, this is where all the people who are injured during our aid attacks, that's where they're being taken. They're seeing the influx there. And so as punishment, they're just trying to, in general, or to attack their foe, they're just attacking that specific structure just because it is so important to the remaining people in Gaza. It's just hard to say which it is, but there's a plethora of reasons that they would attack that hospital specifically.
Medical infrastructure, which has been, the whole medical infrastructure in Gaza has just been attacked and decimated and destroyed. But you have a lot of international doctors from America and around the world who are at Nasser Hospital, and that's the place that they're attacking. I mean, it's just utterly.
And if they killed them, can
insane.
You imagine? Imagine the twists
it's a mishap.
and the turns.
We'll investigate ourselves.
The twists and the turns that Mike Huckabee and other people would twist them,
and they
would put themselves in if an American doctor was killed there. It really is just disgraceful. All right, shall we go ahead and play Trump and his reaction? Let's get to it.
Israelis bombed a hospital in Gaza that killed 20 people, including 5 journalists.
When did this happen?
This happened overnight, today.
I didn't know that.
No. Any reaction to this? Are you
Well,
going
I'm
to
not
talk
happy
to
about it. I don't want to see it. At the same time, we have to end that whole nightmare. Right now, they're talking about Gaza City. There's always talking about something. At some point, it's going to get settled. And I'm saying you better get it settled soon. You have to get it settled soon. And that means, nobody can forget October 7th. With that being said, it's got to get over with. It's got to get over with because between the hunger and all of the other problems, worse than hunger, death, pure death, people being killed, it's a terrible situation over there. Terrible, terrible situation. But it's coming to a head. It's coming to an end. I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to have pretty good conclusive ending.
So you could see.
And I think the only reason he's even using that amount of rhetoric is because of the mounting pressure. I've said it in videos where I've talked about Epstein, but there is more and more and more pressure that I have seen in the last weeks, month, of mounting pressure of everyone basically being on the side of saying that Gaza is a genocide. So that's the thing, is that's the only reason why he's even saying anything. But do not be confused. They could literally end it overnight. All they would have to do is cut off all funding from Israel and tell them, we're no longer going to be funding you, sending you any aid until you completely cease all military operations targeting Gaza. That could literally be done tomorrow. The president is the commander-in-chief, but he won't do it. And that's the thing, is he just kind of wants to give him the little, okay, let's wrap it up. Let's bring it to a close. Do whatever you're going to do, whatever maximalist maneuvers you can pull off in the next 2 weeks, and then maybe we'll do something about it. Or we'll just continue what we have already been doing, which is, we need to give Bibi the bear hug, right? As it was coined under the last administration. Like, none of this is effective. The only thing that would be effective is completely cutting aid to them and then actually taking action on it, not constantly threatening it and then just letting it continue to go. And no action, just status quo, let it continue happening. And again, it is good to see him actually saying that, but that has been said since, this has essentially been the talking point for a year and a half, if not more. So do I have any faith that anything is going to change? Not really.
He says it needs to come to an end, and it will come to an end in 2 to 3 weeks. That is news, I think, to the Israeli government, who wants to continue this thing basically forever.
Who didn't even respond to the latest ceasefire proposal that Hamas accepted.
Literally, which, as I understand it, that was the most ground they had given in a ceasefire proposal. Now, look, they want endless war. Trump and these people, they either don't understand it, do understand it, and just continue to talk out sides of their mouth. I tend to think Trump doesn't understand it.
Or Trump is implicated in something and he doesn't want it to come out.
I think he takes a lot of this Bibi shit seriously. Like, I think he gets on the phone and Bibi's like, yes, we're close. And he's like, well, he told me he was close. Like, it's about the deference.
You think so?
I really do, because at this point, what is the alternative for what's happening? Is that, the alternative right now is total deference to Israeli policy, is an absolute obfuscation and removal of American leadership, of American control over this proxy state, and instead they do what they want to do, and accepting their lies or whatever their policy is without any strategic understanding. And then we had Shahed on yesterday, and anybody who says otherwise, get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
You guys need to listen to that interview if you haven't, because not only does he expose...
I mean, what logically makes sense at this point in time? Because again, there's been so much bluster of, hey, we're gonna, we need to wind things down, we need to wrap things up, but then it never happens. So what is actually going on, and what are the facts? And the only thing that you can look at and come to a rational conclusion is that something happened where there's some sort of blackmail or threat to be assassinated, or something is happening that essentially continues us to keep backing them forever, never actually change what's going on. It makes no difference what they do. We're going to continue sending them aid. We're going to continue sending them military aid. We're going to just back them no matter what they do, no matter how homicidal, no matter how insane, no matter how many fights they pick. We're just going to continue shipping them money and military aid. And it, again, if you think about it critically, that is the only conclusion you can come to. And I'm sure them trying to be taken as a very serious news organization don't want to bring that up, but 100% that is the only conclusion that you can draw from why do we continue this absolutely bananas policy.
That you can't even diverge. He got fired for being like, guys, we're not supposed to call it Judea and Samaria. It's the West Bank. Yeah. That has been standard issue government policy forever. But that was a bridge too far. Also, he was like, we should, I guess we don't, right, guys, we don't support removing Palestinians to, what was it, Sudan, that he objected to specifically?
Yes. South Sudan.
South Sudan. And they're like, no, you gotta go. Sorry, you're too much of a pro-Palestine activist here. This, again, standard issue, pablum stuff from the Biden administration, from the first Trump administration, from the Obama administration. George W., you could go all back and back and back. And now that is out of bounds. The other thing that was important to get from him is that who is running our policy towards Israel at this point? And based on his assessment, it's pretty much Mike Huckabee. It's pretty much Mike Huckabee and his aide, whose name I'm blanking on. Milstein, who was critical in getting Shahed.
I don't know. I think Israel is running our policy towards Israel. As is proven by AIPAC, basically owning every single person in our government. I mean, that's the thing is, if you're not compromised, you're paid for. You're bought and paid for. And that, I mean, I would love to see the percentage of Congress that, and who can ever actually know what the number is. But I mean, AIPAC, right? You can see who gets donations from them, but the compromised as well. Between those two things, it's one or the other or both. And so, yeah, I think Israel is running our own foreign policy towards them, or their own foreign policy, if you will. It's from the U.S. It's not good. I mean, it's a problem, right? Because then they can do whatever they want, and we don't do anything to protest, to stop it. Literally, you could just cut off the funding, but that's completely out of bounds for whatever reason.
Fired, apparently. And Huckabee, as we know, is an absolute end times psycho. He is a religious zealot who is not pushing Israeli policy because it's in America's interest. It's because he has a certain religious ideological fringe belief. And that is what, more than anything at this point, appears to be guiding U.S. policy vis-a-vis, this quote-unquote ally that we send billions of dollars to every year in order to...
And this is why the more I hear about this, it's so difficult, because I think there are good things that people can take away from religion. But when you go to these extremes, and there are things that were claimed in the Bible of a second return and this, that, and the other, and whatever. When there's all these things that then these people tap into who are very religious, and they take as complete doctrine, not as a game of telephone that the message got distorted. No, it's exactly how it says. The Jews have to own from the Nile to the, whatever. And when you believe all these things, you justify absolute atrocities in the name of religion. That's how it's always been throughout time. And so when these things happen and continue to happen because there are zealots that believe in these doctrines of faith, well, then that's where I get very frustrated with religion. And again, that's not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I 100% believe that there are people who get very real gains from practicing religion, from going, to the church for worship. It builds communities. It can help you be a better person. It can give you moral guidelines. But when it's used for insane actions like this, homicidal actions, that's the big reason between a lot of the infighting in the Middle East is religious doctrine. That's where, I get of that second mind where I'm like, it's absolutely disgusting when these zealots get into power and then they try and take, in this instance, military action to follow those basically as an end to that means of trying to make their whatever prophecy come to fruition. I can't. That's where you lose me. And as I said, it's a very common occurrence throughout history. You just look at any major war in the Middle Ages, and most of that was religious infighting.
Create and cause this absolute horror. So that's where we are. So Trump's like, oh, it's going to be over in a few weeks. Like, what are you talking about? His way, it's almost worthless to listen to what he has to say. It just confuses issues more to even listen what he has to say, because there's zero.
Yeah, I think what he means is you will forget about it in a few weeks because something else insane will happen. We're going to move into Chicago and lock Chicago down with the National Guard. Who knows? I wouldn't believe that either. I don't. I think they have dirt on him, and so he's never going to go against what Israel wants to do.
Sign that there's anything other than endless death, destruction, ethnic cleansing, attacks on hospitals, murdering of journalists for the indefinite future, based on what we actually see happening, not whatever bullshit falls out of Donald Trump's mouth on a day-to-day basis.
I think broadly what it is that Trump and them view it like Ukraine. It's intractable. And by intractable, leave it up to how it goes.
Yeah, he's just sort of checked out from it.
Mike is the expert.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also because the part of the coalition, which is all that enthused about it, is mostly in the Democrats, they're like, fine. They don't seem to understand the damage that it's doing to them broadly, not just with young people, but even with younger Republicans. And to be honest, I'm not sure they even care anymore.
Yeah.
Because they paid a lot of lip service, podcasters and all this stuff. They just don't, their view.
And that's part of the issue as well, is that it's not just Like, nothing is going to change because both parties have the same view. And that's what I'm saying. That's what the biggest problem is about AIPAC and buying out both sides, having bought and paid for both sides, is that then it becomes a bipartisan issue. And I will say over and over and over again, anything that's a bipartisan issue, you have to be afraid of in the government. Like, not the actual people that identify as either party, but anything where the elected Democrats and elected Republicans both come out and say we're fully on board with, fully supporting Israel forever, that you need to be very critical of that. That's something dangerous. That's where there's other interests involved, and that's everything that they bipartisan agree with is absolutely awful for the general public, all U.S. citizens. Nothing that they agree with is good for us. So just keep that in mind the next time you see, bipartisan support of shipping aid to Israel.
Is we're America, bitch. It's our second term. We can do whatever we want. And that really basically defines all of their actions if you're looking for like a through line in it. They have no time for anybody who jumps off. Even people who have good faith criticisms, like Shahid. I mean, he was not some mouth-breathing liberal. Did you have that same takeaway?
Yeah.
He was a guy who was like, look, I have a dissenting view. I'm on the inside. I'm going to try and work it to the best I can. But, I mean, he wrote a tweet that said, make Gaza beautiful again. All right? This is not like an idea. Literally. Like, he drafted that tweet for Secretary Rubio, right? That's problematic last time I checked. Like, he's not some pink-haired code pinker.
He wasn't trying to do some revolution.
Exactly. He was just like, hey, guys, like, this is a little bit, this isn't, boom, done. And I think that's the scary part.
That about covers what I wanted to about what's going on in Gaza. Essentially what had happened at this hospital, the double tap attack. Absolutely disgusting. But just wanted to bring additional light to that, as they are just very intentionally targeting people who are civilians or are there to help, right? And I think the more light that can be shined on this problem, the better, because nothing is changing. It's disgusting. They're targeting what little infrastructure still remains. And I think we need to keep turning the temperature up on this, because obviously you can see it is starting to get to Trump, because he had to answer a question about it. And the more that happens, the more he's going to understand that it is an issue that the U.S. public is concerned about, and that is our only shot at getting anything to change. Do I think it'll actually lead to anything? No. Again, I think if you fully believe, like I do, that there's some wicked stuff with Jeffrey Epstein and he is tied to Mossad, then yeah, there's much deeper incentivization for them to not make any changes and just continue with the way things are. Because otherwise, they or people that they know or are friends with or the entire government or whatever is happening, all of that could be compromised, and they do not want that to happen. So again, I think the incentivization structure is very heavy in continuing the status quo, and the only way anything gets done is if everyone makes a huge deal about what they're doing and says, we're fed up with it and we're not going to take it anymore. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in seeing more content from me, give me a subscription. It really will help the channel grow. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.